No, that was for the guy who wants to donate money to me next week.
Yeah,
that's
did
a
you
different.
send that to that guy?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I didn't
was
because you were talking about the Drew Raymond Foundation. I could do that. You know, I have spent so much time editing your work that it just takes a while to get it. Posr understands because he works in the courts. And so he and Frank have been having a discussion, and I will back out now, and they can.
Oh yeah, Carl. I remember last time we were talking about the city attorney general petition must have for New York City must have a method to raise funds in the petition, otherwise it can be invalidated.
It doesn't comply with New York State law, the home rule law of New York State, but that is not a requirement in the New York City provision that allows amendment. The New York City Charter also has a provision by which you can amend it, and there there's no requirement of money, but it doesn't. People don't use that. They use the state law provision, and I think the reason that they do that is that when you look at the city provision, it's ambiguous as to whether it really is intended for massive change or whether it's intended for, like, creating just a simple new position. It's a little bit ambiguous there, and everyone seems to be using the state rule. And I changed it to use the state law, and that requires that you put up the money. People could try this thing under the local rule, and you wouldn't have to show where the money's come from under the New York City Charter provision that allows amendment to the charter.
So what it seems like the state rule is less advantageous than the city rule.
No, it depends on whether the city rule even permits what we're doing. It isn't that clear. I saw ambiguity in the language that could be used to say you can't even do what we're doing. But the state law was clear that we could do it, but it also had that provision that we had to show where the money would come from.
I see.
And since everyone was using that New York State provision, I assumed that they were doing it because it was more practical than trying to use the city provision. I started out using the city provision, not being aware that there was a state provision. And people told me that you've got to show where the money's coming from. And I then saw, and I looked up further and found that there was this state provision that requires that, and that people were using it. And I compared the two, and I wanted to see why they would use the more onerous provision if the less onerous one would suffice. And I saw the ambiguity in there that it didn't. There's a comma missing, or there's a way of constructing it where you could argue that it doesn't really apply. It only applies if you're creating another something like nothing that an elaborate thing like creating a new branch of the police department or something like that. Just something simple.
So
a simple change, but you have to go back and read the language to see that. And I chose to use what everyone else was doing, figuring that history and everything else shows that that's the way of going, and people were telling me that's the way to go, and I saw the ambiguity, and that's the reason why I switched from the New York City provision into the state provision.
So Frank Craven and I had a little difference of opinion as to the petition that's being put forth by Frank Morales and what's his name, Billy?
Les Jamieson.
Les Jamieson, and I was saying that my understanding was that petition did not have a provision for how to get the money to pay for the city attorney general's.
The answer is yes and no on that one. They attempted to put in a provision, but the provision they put in didn't have any teeth to it. It only said, "Don't worry, somehow we'll raise the money."
and that would not comply with the state home rule.
If you were a judge and you had a requirement of, let's say, 6 or 7 elements to see whether or not you comply with the law, and the first element is you have to have signatures of a voter, and you have to have a registered voter do it, one by one, if you tick off the things, and then it said you have to have a plan to show where the money is coming from. And if you told the judge, well, our plan is, don't worry, we'll get it somehow. Do you think that's a plan that complies with law?
Well,
if you as a judge had that before you, would you rule that that's a plan to say, don't worry, we'll get it somehow?
All right, but it's my understanding that basically it's a petition to ask the public to investigate 9/11, an official inquiry with a citizen panel seeing the power. Basically, we're petitioning government to say we want to look into this.
That's describing what the
No, that
panel
first
is.
statement about the money didn't go through. You were talking at the same time. You need to say that. Start that again.
If the money is defective, there's no plan, there's no petition, there's no statute, you've lost totally. There's no preservation of part of it. If you don't comply with all the elements of the statute, you get nothing.
They needing money accountability. You'll need a CPA or an accountant to do all the bookkeeping, no?
No, that comes after. You have to have a plan. They don't tell you whether you have to hire lawyers, accountants, educators, professionals. You have your investigation, which is what you're saying the subject matter of your statute would be.
So, Carl, your idea of a plan for City Attorney General was that you would go after wrongdoers against the people, much in the same way that the State Attorney General does.
Exactly. He raised $3 billion in 2003, and half of that really belonged to New York.
Right.
He never got it.
Right.
So I knew that following that alone and doing it part-time, you could get a $1.5 billion a year.
Right.
And I think Cuomo has demonstrated that that's true.
Okay.
He's gone ahead and is doing pretty much the same thing. But I would do it at a more local level where you have the money coming into New York City and go after companies that got benefits and pulled out and left us in the lurch, people that were stealing money from citizens in a variety of sophisticated ways, which I think are becoming more clear now than they were a year or so ago. Now we see more about how the failure to enforce the law has created this monumental mess. All I've wanted to do those same statutes. I've always claimed that we needed to enforce things that the government was failing to do it, and now we're in this terrible mess. But people are responsible for it, and we could go after them. It's even better now than ever before.
Right.
Well, back to the money for 1 second. What if the petition said, well, we'll raise money by private donations, we'll ask Ed Asner, we'll ask some people with a lot of money to donate? What if the petition stated that as a plan?
I think that is just saying, don't worry, we'll raise it somehow. I think that's just what you've said there, in other words. Don't worry, somehow we'll raise it. If you said that we're going to take real estate that exists that isn't being used by New York City, which I put in, and we're going to take our choice of the 5 of the best properties and sell them and use that money, that's a plan. That you see as a plan. There's assets there, they're not being used, we're going to take them. That's doable. If I'm going to sue people and use the proceeds, if I'm going to increase the parking meter by 25 cents an hour and use that extra money, that's a plan. But just going out and saying, don't worry, I'm going to ask people for money, I don't think that's a plan, because that's inherent. You could always say that. That's just...
Well, isn't the first things first? We have to get the ballot initiative looked into and officially sanctioned by the government, the city council, say, yes, we're looking into it. Now, it's a question of funding it. Hello?
No, the statute says you have to bring your Christmas package to us all tied up in every respect. You have to have a complete package that you present to the voters. If you're missing an element, you have no package at all. The statute requires that it all be done in the petition, and not to have loose ends of the requirements to come back and be followed through after the petition is voted on. If you don't meet the elements of the statute, you're not even
Now, let me just switch the subject here to how things are going in hopeless Indiana, because you're well, maybe you could update what's happening with the city attorney general and the town attorney general, hopeless, and how it might expand.
We're reviewing the matters that could require the town attorney general for hopeless to go into court on behalf of the town, and gathering information about those matters. So that's from that standpoint. Nothing's been done yet on the payroll administration, the central payroll.
That's creating a 501c3, right?
No, not needed, because it's absolutely non-profit, and there's no need to either get donations. It's going to be a co-op that works on a zero basis, that it uses up whatever money it gets. It only gets money to cover its own expenses, so it isn't important that it be funded with donations. It'll pay for itself, and it won't have a profit. So you really don't need to go through that expense and delay of setting up a 501c3 to shelter anything, or to on either the profit or the donation end. So it's a wasted expense to try to go through that.
Okay, Carl, along the lines of the town attorney general, and you were talking about, you did a Yahoo search, you paid him $50 to figure out how many areas there were, and you came up with 40,000. Now, since you were one of the creators of the fastest growing careers in America, which was paralegal for 15 years, do you also envision training city, county, town attorney generals that have more sophistication than just zoning in the same way?
Yes. In the field of law, we have continuing legal education courses required of every lawyer that's practicing law. And what I envision is that the fact that we have niches of law where people become experienced in negligence lawsuits, or they become experienced in zoning, or in real estate closings, or in bankruptcy filings. The fact that we have such specialization in law is exactly contrary to what you need at the bottom of our government. At the top, we have specialized fields like the SEC. So would you expect that an SEC lawyer would become familiar with real estate transactions? And the answer is no. They're specialized in the government agency. Securities lawyer. In the bankruptcy courts, they want a bankruptcy lawyer. And in the Federal Trade Commission, they want a trade lawyer. But if you're going to be a lawyer covering all of those fields, you suddenly have to blossom into someone with the skill of a judge. A judge, if you'll think about it for a minute, has to handle cases coming from all these different disciplines. So somebody has to train lawyers that are skilled in zoning or in slip and fall cases, to train them in a much broader way to be able to do what an attorney general's office can do. An attorney general of New York State has numerous divisions. They have a Bureau of Securities, for example, where they specialize in securities offerings or in real estate subdivisions.
Now, what?
And so you need to have if a single lawyer is going to be the attorney general for a town, that lawyer has to know a hell of a lot more than slip and fall or zoning, and therefore training would be appropriate to educate them on where the claims are, because they may not know what a give back or clawback provision is. They may not know that you can sue people who take money from the town and then leave without giving the town what they promised in the form of jobs. You can claw back, even if there isn't a provision. You can allege fraud, misrepresentation, and sue them to get your money back for all the expenses you put in on their behalf, only to see them move the jobs out of town. So you have to teach people how to be sophisticated here. It's not a natural thing. There's a lot of information that you can impart to direct the 40,000 town attorney generals about the country.
Of course. And you as the creator of this type of education sort of got tipped off because of all of these bribes, or I don't know, not bribes, but the $1 billion that are given to candidates, they expect something in return. And in terms of the federal organizations that aren't doing their job. So if you figure what job isn't being done, and then you see what the implications are on the local level, it seems to me that's the kind of education that the local town attorney general needs.
It seems to me that at the top, at the very highest level of government, they really have done very little that is helpful. They do as little as possible, and that means that the money is able to be siphoned out into the hands of the rich. That by doing nothing, you allow the rich to get and keep the nation's wealth, and that's what's happened here. If you'll think about it, that we really have seen a wholesale loss of the nation's wealth, and it winds up in someone's hands. Ask yourselves in the room, is it in the hands of anyone there? It goes to someone, and it goes to the rich. And we have laws that try to make business fair and to have a fair deal for consumers. But, for example, the laws of usury of each state. As soon as Bush got into office, he signed that statute as the first effort that he did. He signed the statute that allowed the banks to charge usurious rates by giving them federal protection and eliminating state law that protected people from usurious loans. We no longer have that as to federal financial institutions. They can charge anything they want. So you can still go after them for fraud by not disclosing things, but it's harder. But you still need this job done. You need to work within the law, whatever it is. You need sophistication now to try to rectify things, and we need training of people. We have room for 40,000 lawyers.
Right.
Be very helpful. They could be sub-attorney generals, but I call them town attorney generals.
Right.
And we need that, because no one else is doing it.
Well, I know anybody who's really concerned with the issues of the people really have a feeling of what you're up to. I learned that when I was in Colorado with the state representative. He instantly understood what you were talking about.
Yeah, well, I just view it as a miniature government consisting of the FTC, the SEC, the Attorney General of the state, the Federal Attorney General, the EEOC, all of these government alphabetical agencies wrapped up into one, managed by one person called a town attorney general. That is a hell of a job.
Right, right.
Tell me, Carl, are you hopeful or disappointed about President-elect Obama and his selection of the cabinet?
Oh, absolutely both. I was glad that he won, and I see problems immediately, and especially with his appointments, and I see disappointment, and I see business as usual, and I don't think much is going to happen. I think that more so than ever before, my program is needed, and it's going to be absolutely essential to put it across, because it really still represents the only hope. Do you really believe that anyone in the Obama administration or any of the old guard that they've kept with them is going to put in a free college in every town and village?
Yes, hopefully. Why not? And to give them anything's possible. I have total faith in God and the possibility of wonderful, peaceful resolution and diplomacy, not bombs.
Yeah, they're not going to do that, because as Hopeless, the mayor of Hopeless, and I have recognized that there's only two main things at the state level from a political standpoint. There's only two institutions there that count. One of them is the state police, and the other is higher ed. Higher ed dominates at every state level. And you're going to offer a free college throughout the state, any state, and not have opposition?
Well, what about the old guard, Frank, makes you think that they will...
Pelosi, what do you think Pelosi is going to do? She's old guard, she's still in charge.
No, what about his team makes you think that he's going to do some effort about
Well, that's it.
about free
Recycling the
education.
old Clintonites makes me afraid of the New World Order and business as usual with a new facade.
Right.
But in reality,
I think
Obama could be the best president this country's ever known if he really steps up and works with that spirituality that we all know, that we're all connected and war is over.
I hope he will be, but the people surrounding him, he hasn't appointed any of us so far, has he?
Yeah, we're looking for more blacks and women on the cabinet, or Native Americans.
Well, what we're looking for is somebody that thinks like us, that's looking for improvement, advancement, change, real change. But we see business as usual. I mean, how much more money do we have to give to the failing institutions before we bankrupt our country? What is this, giving all our money to the people that caused it to be this way?
Say, along the lines of practicalities, if some good-hearted person wanted to make a donation, I was discussing this with you, it seems as though in Hopeless, Indiana, the most important place to put money is advertising for myclads.com. Could you sort of explain that process?
Yes. To me, the most important development for the people right now is to bring income to them at a time when job opportunities are diminishing rapidly, both as to the number of jobs available, the type of jobs, and how much they pay, and the benefits. There's just a serious reduction in the value of employment in America. Something has to be done to replace that, and MyClads is an obvious way of doing it, and that is just putting the people's tasks on a database and then marketing that task to that 25-mile radius around the town where the people have listed themselves, and you can do it very inexpensively by using the local cable television, radio, and newspaper advertising within a 25-mile radius. But this means you have to go in, first of all, before advertising, you have to saturate a town with people to get everyone listed. That's where your real cost is. Your cost is in getting people to register for the website. It's all free, but you have to spend an effort putting them on the website.
Isn't Craigslist already doing that, more or less?
That you have to bring them in. It's all for free, but who's going to do this for free? Who's going to register the people for free?
Yeah, and also you were talking about a whole profession helping people to find the right tag words. You know,
in other words, that we have now employment counselors, we have employment agencies who are theoretically trying to get jobs for people in exchange for money. But what we really need now is a new kind of profession to help people analyze what they can do themselves and offer as tasks. So we need task managers rather than employment agency counselors. We need task managers to help identify what you can do and put it on the website, and to create website landing pages for each task that you say you would like to do. Have a website landing page where a person can click on your mow lawns and see the equipment you use and where you are, and the names of customers that are satisfied, and your price list and how fast you do it, and how the results with appearances. I mean, you can dress it up and really be marketing yourself with all of these tasks. But that's a whole industry. It's a revolution in terms of how we go about marketing people usefully. Instead of jobs which no longer are in vogue, we should offer tasks, and that eliminates the middleman, and there's no payroll tax. It's very efficient.
You know, when you say
it creates new employment all over the place to make it work.
Right, right. When you say jobs are no longer in vogue, I thought it was very, I don't know what the word is, refreshing to see you and Harold come together on your last interview with him, where you were saying you were dodging the issue about what about when jobs are no more relevant, but you see that corporations now are not looking for more employees, and that technology is moving in the direction where jobs are becoming passé. And yet to create...
And what Harold was saying was that at the time when we no longer have any jobs at all in the country because automation does it all, nanotechnology and automation and everything else, and there's really no need because the tractors, the gas is made and pumped and created and found, and it's used, and everything is done automatically. We all sit at home and we have nothing to do. But somebody has to feed us, so that he was asking me, well, how do you allocate the economy when there really is no work to do and you can't then work to get money? That was his original question to me a couple of years ago, and I ducked it because I really thought it was pretty far out, and I didn't really want to speculate. I wanted to talk more about what's doable today.
That's my question now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I disagree with that whole assessment. There's always going to be a restaurant going to need waiters and cooks, and there's going to be people who need to clean up the floors, and the mechanics got to fix cars, and farmers got to weed the crops and harvest the fruit, and there's jobs. There's always going to be work and jobs.
No, that's not necessarily true because somebody there could be an automatic. I mean, Japan is building robots. The better you can build a robot, you can actually make a robot that could serve as a waiter.
Yeah, but still, there needs to be cleaning and mechanics to fix cars, and always jobs. There's always going to be a job out there for someone.
What about prostitutes? How do we replace them?
Why? That's impossible. God bless them.
What's that?
With a Cherry 2000 cyborg. The futuristic
They have some machines now, but for a long time, within our lifetime, we're going to be having some jobs available, but a diminishing number and the lower quality with lower benefits. And I think we can switch around now and create our own economy, but in doing so with the tasks, we have got to look at manufacturing. We've got to bring that back.
Well, but that's where my limited understanding of binary economics, that's where the theory of capital ownership being more accessible to the people comes into the idea of when all the machines are doing all the work, how do people then get money to pay the rent and do this and do that? And that's where there needs to be access to the means to own the machines that are doing the work so that you get the profit from the machines.
Well, that may be half of us, but the other half want to eat today, and the way I'm doing that is to allow them to offer their tasks for money, even though the economy may in the long run have no tasks or jobs. I think for the next 50 or 100 years, we're going to be offering tasks and jobs, but with tasks going to be taking over. I think it's a more practical way to offer services, to offer them that are skilled, get the job done, get out, and don't be an overhead expense.
But pardon me, you see, some people are actually in that segment of society that already can't get the jobs because the machines are doing, so much of the work. Some people are already there.
No, that's exactly why they should then have a task consultant or a task manager direct them into offering their hours of work, doing things they never even heard of but could be capable of doing. And we've got to redirect people that way. Instead of training them for jobs, we've got to direct them into tasks and offering tasks and performing them. And that brings up another thing of training people to perform tasks, having people manage task managers. In the same way we have investment managers, we have to have people managers. We have to allow people to have managers to be able to help them direct the tasks that they want to invest in, meaning that ones that they want to offer and work at. So we need to give help to the people, and we can take them out of the situation that you described where they no longer can do the job they had. That's not the issue any longer. They can still do tasks, even if the tasks don't relate at all to the job that they had.
These are some mind-boggling concepts, and I thought it was pretty brilliant how you dealt with changing light bulbs in marquees, to get around the fact that automation isn't doing everything. And I think this is a nice transition, and it's kind of like a high school counselor or even a college counselor to help you choose which things you wanted to study, so that the tuition-free university could be a very exciting, robust, kind of place to spend your time and to interact with other people. And, right now all you can do is learn how to be an editor on Final Cut Pro.
You want to know how $25,000 can revitalize the entire country?
How?
By putting $25,000 into the hiring of people to go into Hopeless or Woodstock or any other town, just one town that has a population, let's say, of 7,500, just people and treat them, have a war room set up, and just direct them to each and every home, each and every family, with a portable computer to put everyone on and help them with their tasks as much as possible. And then market those to the adjoining 25-mile area. That'll use up the whole $25,000. That'll jumpstart it, it'll show the validity of it, and it will spread at its own expense.
How much are you buying computers for?
That's a great idea, Carl.
You know what? That idea reminds me of what they did in Ithaca, New York, a college town, with Ithaca dollars, Ithaca hours. They created their own currency, and they made a community task force for barter and trade.
Yeah, but we have to go in there. Instead of trying to explain to a town, we have the power to go in and do it. We don't have to ask permission. We can just go in and do it. And I think that
because people are scared.
Be it that we're going to just have to go in and do. We have to show it instead of explaining it. We have to go in and do it. And $25,000 in a small town will do it. It'll do it. That's really what it takes to make America great again. Anyone that is thinking of putting up $25,000, that'll be put in a fund and used and audited and used only for that. No salaries for the people like us that are doing it, just to pay the people to go around and put persons in that town on the website and to market the website. 25,000 will create the revolution.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to remind you of the question that Frank asked last time and asked again. Why is Craigslist not doing this?
Craigslist allows you to have an ad-on for only 7 days. If you're asking anyone to put in 500 ads and say that you're going to have to put them back on every 7 days, they won't do it, number one.
And you can't spam
Number two,
them.
Craigslist charges in some areas. Number three, Craigslist makes your ad be put in only in your own area, and that's a mistake. They make you choose an area, South Utica, for example, or something like that, and then that's the only place you're allowed to put the ad on. If you put it in northern New York, they flame you for having duplicated the ad. I want the ads to have only a zip code, and you can put in as many ads as you want, even though they overlap. I want to eliminate this flaming and this restriction and the fact that it only lasts for a week. I want to have ads. I want people to define themselves forever financially and have the ads put on for free and forever and as many as they want.
You know, that's a type of capital ownership. That's a type of power of capital ownership. That the idea of being able to have an ad on forever as long as you want is kind of like having real estate that grows in value.
You're the equipment now and you own yourself 100%.
Yeah.
Talking of ownership, this is creating a nation of independent contractors that own themselves. And the managers are going to be able to have one hell of a field day in helping people. And we may have to regulate managers to prevent them from stealing by saying we want 50% of your hours. Maybe by some kind of regulation that they won't be allowed to work with anyone on the website, or will post people that are offending. But you have abuse. You'll have people like mutual funds where they take too much and do too little. You might have that same thing develop in trying to help people manage their hours. You might find people stealing too much of the money.
No, I know. You know, once you start opening these avenues of wealth, it's mind-boggling the kinds of problems that come up.
But do you know that Hopeless, Indiana has $250 million worth of unsold time each year that I'm dealing with? $250 million of available time to sell at $30 an hour. You have to figure out what the hourly rate is that you're assuming, and I'm assuming $30 an hour.
Now that's what a binary economist, if I'm not mistaken, would call unutilized capacity.
Oh yeah, this is what I estimate is available for the town to offer, $250 million worth of services, but I want that to be switching into manufacturing. We've got to work on that.
Now see, this is why people who you know, decades ago, who were looking beyond the horizon were so excited about new technology, because they could see all these liberating possibilities. But what you're talking about now is it's a matter of educating people so that they're not so discouraged, because right now there's this sort of hope about Obama and the spiritual quality, but there's not really an understanding of how you do it.
Well, Obama can be real, and I hope he is, but the reality is the same way that when Spitzer went from working alone and doing his thing into becoming governor. He then had to cooperate with others, and he was going to steamroll everyone, but they still had to vote, and Spitzer had to work for cooperation. And Obama, likewise, has to try to get people to agree, a bunch of thieves, basically, to try to agree to take less. And I don't know if he's going to be able to convince them to do that.
But if you're having a whole country of independent contractors, it sort of doesn't make that much difference, does
Well, that's right. That's why you can reform things at the lowest level, because they don't really care what's going on. It's one-to-one. A person wants his lawn mowed or his carburetor replaced, or wants to find people willing to do any kind of defined task, and they can go direct and hire each other or pay to have the job done, and it's without government involvement, because it's a legitimate independent contractor, and you don't have insurance, you don't have payroll deduction, you really only have a 1099 at most, which is just reporting the fact of the income transfer.
Anything more?
Yeah. You know, weren't you upset, Posr, about something, and you wanted some advice? Who to go to and how to start building?
Well, we were talking about cameras in the court, and I was saying that I believe that cameras in the court is the true means to a peaceful revolution, simply because disputes always wind up in the court, and when you don't have cameras in there, people who do the transcripts are they're falsifying transcripts.
Really?
People can't see.
Well, they can't hear. Sometimes on accident a person talks too fast, or they're not. Anyways, go ahead, ask your question.
Yeah, well, I don't know what question actually Suzanne is referring to, but
people get in trouble and they need documentation so they can say, you know, this was unfair. After they've been in the system, maybe they only got a year, but they need to come back, and they're still upset and they need closure because they feel like maybe they were done wrong. So where did you want to start from that? What authority people would you go to discuss this about? Is that what you wanted?
Well, the authority, I think, is the people ultimately, but it's how that can come about simply has to, people have to know that or feel or want it to happen.
Okay, what do you want to happen?
Yeah, well, I want to be able to bring a camera in any court proceeding that's happening.
How would you start? I think it should be illegal to be able to bring a camera in the courtroom.
Why don't they allow video cameras in court?
That would keep it fair.
Let me try to give, this is Carl Pearson, let me try to give a little bit of that. There has been a movement off and on to do that, and the state court allowed it at some point, and the federal court has not allowed it. And what they say is that too many people, the lawyers particularly, play to the camera at the expense of their client.
It's a bogus argument.
The judge.
It's a bogus. That's a bogus argument. Lawyers have
He's not defending that.
No,
He's
I'm not saying that you're defending it. I'm just saying that's a bogus argument.
Okay, you go ahead. Finish it.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and that the judge particularly might be trying out for a show.
Who cares? Besides that,
with a case, as we saw with that adoption case.
Maybe we should go to the civil liberties
playing
union.
to the camera, crying on the camera, and wound up with a television show, possibly. Because of this possibility, it's a diversion. But to be truthful, really, I would love to have cameras required in every court and be there 24 hours a day for anyone to zoom in on and see what's going on.
Zoom in?
I would love that to happen without have the camera turned on totally, 100%, never off. Have it be a C channel or a C-SPAN courtroom number one.
Yeah, like the Senate hearings or congressional hearings.
Everyone be
public.
To tap in at any time and to record and to use it, and you would find that there would be a higher quality of justice.
Yes, I agree.
Would be conforming to what is expected rather than knowing that no one is ever going to be able to show what they did. There's no cameras allowed, no audio recording equipment. I mean, all of these things are prohibited in many of the courts, and I think it's unfortunate. We ought to just have it be fixed, and I agree with that concept, but the law is not that way. And since the
Carl, would
easier to work that way.
Maybe the American
could I take a good guess to say that you feel at this point so excited about your 4-point program that prosperous people will be in court less?
No, I'm actually hoping that we have greater court activity to have the rights of the people enforced. I believe that the courts are useful to, and I think that 5% of the economy ought to be devoted to the system to resolve issues most efficiently. And I think another 5% ought to be devoted to electing officials most efficiently. So if we take 10% of our economy, 5% for justice and 5% for the election of candidates, the other 90% will be fantastic.
When you and Dean and I were doing a show together, Dean rattled off some name that indicated the election of the candidates was taken care of. What was that name?
The Feingold McCarran Act or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a statute, but it allows people to collect money independently, as Obama did.
I see.
There's no requirement that people use only government money, and that is the rub.
I see. You want them to require only to use government money. That way you don't have to wonder about who they owe favors to.
That is correct. I would like adequate financing, even if it's $5 billion every year. Whatever it is, I don't care. It's the same way with the justice system. We ought to spend as much as it takes to be able to provide adequate, and I mean responsible justice, both criminal and civil. And we ought to do the same thing for electing officials. But once you've done that, and assuming it's about 10% of the economy, wow, the other 90% will be fantastic.
Right. Can you make any comments about your lawsuit with Google, how that's going along?
I think Google is getting better and better, except for one thing. Google's president is now Obama's closest advisor.
So what does that mean?
What would you think? The head of the guy I'm suing has an ear to the President of the United States in economic matters, and especially as to whether antitrust lawsuits will be brought.
You know, something that you share with binary economists is, it seems from, because I was listening to Mortimer Adler, I think a guy named Mike Wallace, maybe in the 50s, was talking to him. And he was talking about the importance of government regulation for freedom, but it was only regulation to keep monopolies from growing. I think younger people today can't even remember the horrors of monopoly, and I think what we see growing up around us we don't even recognize.
4 houses equals a hotel. Anyways, you never finish where this young man can go to start his little movement with the cameras. You never gave any good advice how he could start. He's troubled about this.
It's political, and you're going to have to possibly, for example, in New York City, pass a petition, a vote of the people, and put cameras in the state courts. You can do that.
How about if individuals are just allowed to bring their own cameras who sit in the audience?
No, they throw them out. They don't allow them to do it in most courts. You would think that you have freedom to do it, but if you somehow manage to get the camera in there, they'll take it away from you.
So would he go to a government official to start, like a politician?
No, you go to the Congress and ask them to pass a statute, and then they laugh at you.
That's why there has to be a movement.
Yeah, so if we can pass a statute in New York City.
Yeah, but that would be a city ordinance and not.
But half a loaf, isn't that pretty good to start off and prove our theory?
Yes, that sounds reasonable. And in every town and every village has I guess a referendum. Well, most do.
In New York State, every town and village has the right to do an initiative.
So, Carl, would it follow the same program as the 9/11 ballot initiative? So
yes.
It's the same precedent.
Anything you want to do, except you're not allowed to change the district attorney's office. You can't change the county clerk's office, and you can't really go against state or federal law. Those are certain barriers, certain prohibitions upon the use of the home rule statute.
Well, what about in Hopeless, Indiana? Can I bring my camera in a court in Hopeless, Indiana?
I presume not. I think it's pretty much nationwide that the courts are not allowing it.
Aren't you as district attorney there in charge of the law and set the precedents?
Yeah, and because if there were courtroom cameras allowed, you'd be seeing a lot more of it on the air. I think you see it coming out of court all the time.
No, that's that. Most states allow cameras in the courts.
Well, then what's happening there?
There's a monopoly. What it is that there's a monopoly on what companies are allowed to actually go in and broadcast what's happening. That's what.
That's not allowing cameras the way I see it.
No.
I mean that's allowing approved cameras that are innocuous and not going to make waves. That doesn't help us that much.
Yeah, but that's the monopoly that's actually happening.
But it sounds, Carl, like something that should be in the same package as 9/11. I mean, I was telling
you have 100 different things that we would like to change, and you don't want to really create a book as a petition. They would probably knock it out as too cumbersome or something like that, and not able to be put on the ballot. You can't have, for example, what about a petition that has one word, reform, and let everyone sign it, and then pass that? What would you get?
everybody would sign it.
Yeah, they would, but you wouldn't get anything because you haven't spelled it out.
Right.
So each one needs to be spelled out with the statute that would authorize it, and to be careful to think of what exceptions, and to think through. You got to write a statute the same way they have a lot of people in Congress writing statutes. We have to do the same thing. We have to be careful the way we construct a statute, because it's going to be a statute if passed. But we can pass a statute that authorizes authorizes people to go into court as long as they're not disruptive and they're not there when the court holds a confidential hearing outside of the others. You're going to have to respect some of that and not feel free to invade the judge when he's going to the bathroom, for example.
Well, more power to you, Carl. We want to help you out.
Right.
What
now,
can we do?
One last thing. Just one last thing. I still want to ask this Google thing, because if Obama's, the person who's the head of Google has the ear of the president, how does this bode for your lawsuit, which seemed very legitimate to me, that Google grew up as a result of acquiring 65 companies?
Well, number one, I don't expect that the antitrust division of the Justice Department under Obama is going to be filing a brief, an amicus brief on my behalf against Google in my lawsuit.
Right.
So how about that for openers?
Right.
Nor can I expect that the federal government is going to bring a lawsuit against Google for monopolization.
So is it going to take 40,000 town attorney generals?
How many new corporations conducted two presidential debates during the 2008 election? Google. They did two of them through YouTube.
And they wouldn't allow Ralph Nader or Cynthia McKinney on the debates.
I mean, Google is truly a monopoly. They have a monopoly on search advertising. Yahoo is going to have to fold. Microsoft can't compete against them. This is going to get worse and worse as Google multiplies the different areas where it's dominant. It uses that money from one monopoly to build another, and it's all pervasive. It's just sweeping. They have so many great developments here, and people with all the money in the world can do these things, but there's a price. You pay the price down the road. It squeezes out any competition, definitely. It ruins them, ruins competition. You have to stop corporations from getting so large that they have a monopoly, or that we can't afford to let them fail. We know that it's wrong to let these companies get so large that we can't afford to have them fail.
That's what I think Mortimer Adler meant about government regulation to protect freedom.
Government regulation is no better than the people who regulate.
Then how do you do it?
Well, you have to have elections, and you have to have people in office. And if they don't get there, then we have to work at reform at the grassroots level. That's where I'm going, because I think reform at the top
So in other words, it is the 40,000 town attorney generals.
That's where our reform is going to be. We're going to recreate the federal government in the form of a town attorney general.
I see. So that's why you need new websites.
He's going to be the sheriff doing what the federal government no longer does.
So that's why you do need new websites and so on.
Oh, yeah. You need reform. The town attorney general will be the new federal government.
I see. Well, I think that says it all. Do you have any last statements?
Well, that's the way it is in small towns now.
But they don't have the skill now. They only know zoning. That's all they know. They practice zoning. That's all. That's the way the town divvies up the money, is through zoning and payoffs. They don't have the sophistication of knowing who to sue and for what reason. They need a town attorney general as the new sheriff.
You know what? I got an idea. Let's take the pyramid and turn it upside down. The new trickle up theory.
That's what a bottom up government does. You want to work from the bottom up instead of the top down. That's exactly the point that people make. They don't say turning it upside down. They will say from the bottom up. It's the same point that you're making.
No, you're making. I saw Paula Gloria interview you before.
Turn it around. Well, that's what we're doing. We're going bottom up instead of top down. When you have the mayor in New York ordering everything and everyone says yes sir, that's top down. Federal government is top down. They determine a couple of people at the top and the rest of us follow suit. But at the bottom up, we can go into a town, one town only, and make change. And that can spread through a grassroots approach. And I want the MyClass website to spread that way. I want the town attorney general concept to spread that way. And the free college to spread that way. Imagine if people were really educated enough to know what's going on. Oh my God, there would be a hell of a price to pay if people learned what was going on.
That's the tuition-free university. I mean, you must be really excited about a whole bunch of really great things to teach.
Well, I only limited my package to 4. I didn't want to bring in open cameras in court. I mean, there's so many different things you can add. I had to pick 4 things that would sell.
And what are those 4 things?
4 things are, number 1, a town attorney general. Number 2, a tuition-free equivalency college where any resident of the town can have a free college education, including free books. That is absolutely possible for every town and village in the United States. The college may go beyond the borders of a single small town, but every area can have its own free college. Number 3, a payroll administration that's area-wide that will allow only a single policy of unemployment insurance policy, a single workman's comp policy, one office, and they can administer the payroll for all of the 800 small businesses in the area and free them up from a lot of the costs and the effort involved in the federal regulation of payroll. So that is a fantastic thing for households that hire domestics and for small business that do or want to hire people. It will boost classic employment with payroll deductions about 20% or more, I estimate.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about the town government administering the payroll of...
Just having a little room somewhere and call it Town Payroll Administration Cooperative. And you can have it as a separate corporation, but it doesn't have to be a non-profit. It'll be non-profit. It'll just be a collective for administering payroll.
So even private businesses are going to punch a clock in this, I guess, like a government agency.
No, nobody punches a clock. Joe, the gas station, calls up every Thursday and says, we have 4 hours for our part-time person, and they already know it's $9.75 an hour. So all the rest, Joe only calls up the administrator of payroll and says it's 4 hours this week for my one part-time employee. Doesn't have to do all that paperwork himself and have the policies and the audits and everything. It can be handled very inexpensively on a cooperative basis.
I know payroll tax is a real drag. I've had families who've had businesses, and you've got to get the bookkeeper, and
drags you down. It's just too much.
So if you're really little, you just avoid getting an employee.
That is correct.
You know,
and it would boost employment because it will now make households be able to legitimately hire people, but that's not the real problem. It's the small businesses that don't hire because of the added drag on their time complying with payroll. And to go in, and many small business owners don't put themselves on any payroll, and they forfeit their right to Social Security as a result. They lose a lot of the Social Security entitlement that they otherwise would have had. They can't afford to be on payroll because they can't pay the payroll tax. So
Thomas Jefferson said, "Don't pay tax, working people, just property owners."
That's a great idea.
I'm saying that if you have a business, you either don't hire people or you do. If you don't hire people, you don't have a payroll, you don't have to worry about every week putting together a payroll and administering it and having audits and insurance policies and all the like. It's a big burden on a small business who's only just trying to repair cars and not be an accountant and having all the paperwork associated with one person on payroll.
Good point.
But we can make that easier for a small business by having just one, having it be a local co-op that will perform that task, and it will be easy then for any small business to hire somebody for a few hours or to hire several people, seasonal, full-time, part-time, and the like. It will be done automatically and easily, and that will be a benefit to the town because it will encourage, stimulate classic employment, which is useful and helpful to people. But the main thing still is my class.
Yes. What's the fourth?
The fourth thing is I've said the Attorney General.
It's my class.
Has the free college and the payroll. Those four.
No, my clads is the fourth.
That's a task marketplace.
Right.
The market that tasks the available hours of the town to the world through a free website.
That's the one. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Well, I just have one question, and that is, so when are we going to have the first town attorney general convention?
All right.
Of where?
The town attorney general convention.
Well, we first of all, I'm having a convention right here in my room alone, since I'm the only one in the world who's a town attorney general.
So we need more in order to have a convention.
More of me, and I hope that and really, you could have laymen be a town attorney general.
Yes.
They would only have to hire a lawyer. I mean, a mayor really could direct a lawyer to do those things that a town attorney general should be doing. A layman could function effectively as the policy maker.
Well, Carl, couldn't you do that with your equivalency college?
Like take President Cheney, for example. He can tell the Attorney General what to do. So that makes President Cheney really the Attorney General. A layman can be an Attorney General by directing the activities of the Attorney General.
Very interesting.
You need a licensed lawyer to go into court.
I see.
But President Cheney can direct a licensed lawyer to go into court and do something. So the people who are in political charge really become the policy makers for the office of the Attorney General. So the mayor, by deciding to hire me, has implemented this office. And the mayor can tell me not to do something because I'm not elected.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. Years ago, my father said, you know, Paula, I don't think women should be lawyers and engineers. And I said, yeah, Daddy, I think you're right. We should hire them. Carl, I want to thank you so much because working with you and, you know, editing the shows that we do together has just given me so much hope and so much reason to go on and to be able to give people bright messages as I uncover things that aren't so bright. So I want to thank you.
Well, I thank you, too, for this opportunity and everyone that can help us carry this message through and be able to implement it at the ground level, because we can make change. Change is possible, but at the ground level, at the lowest level of government, we can do it rather easily. At the top level, it's a mirage, it's a bunch of mirrors, and it's every 4 years, and it's all bullshit.
Yeah. Yay, Carl Pearson. All right, God bless you. Change is possible.
It's supposed to be people from the community. You know, the founders laid it out a little bit different than what's going on now. They're interested in maintaining their jobs. They're working...
You know, the founders, it turns out, the American Indians had a lot of input into the Constitution, I found out. Did you know that?
No? How did that happen?
I'll send you the website somebody sent me. It had to do with representation and so on. But I think the idea of the technology that when you were talking to Harold about MyClads, you said that 10 years ago you couldn't do this.
Well, that's correct. I had my plan. Well, not totally. I was working on. I started off perhaps 15 or 20 years ago with a concept which I called. I had the letters BS assigned to my project, and I'm trying to think of what BS meant. Bargain sales. I think it was bargain sales. I was thinking of computer cards and trying to allow everyone to put things on a computer and make them available. It was a predecessor to eBay, but I wasn't able to implement it. I took a wrong choice. I hired the wrong people to implement it, and I got way off base, and eBay came out. And not that mine would have been anything like eBay, but it was in that vein. I called it E-Clads. No, something. I forget what it was.
Yeah,
E-classified ads. I called it E-Clads.
Well, we all have different...
I switched it now, and I actually have my website done, and it's MyClads, and I've made it task-oriented, which
is it
was
myclads.com?
Yeah, myclads.com.
Could you spell it? MyClads?
It's myclassifiedadvertisements.com, so MyClads is a short way. Either way works.
Spell it.
My, classified, CLASSIFIED, ads or advertisements, I forget, but the short form is easier, MyClads.com.
Thanks a lot, Carl. We're out of tape.
And did you hear about the alcohol instead of gas? Because Ford built the motor to work on distilleries as well as gasoline, because everybody had one back then in the 1920s.
A distillery?
Yes.
Who knows?
I guess Carl's gone. Bye-bye.